It was established to provide support and assistance to small and medium-sized enterprises in the country. But years on, have they been able to provide the required support, financial assistance, and technical support to these small and medium-sized enterprises out there? I'm talking about the Ghana Enterprises Agency. I'm privileged to engage its Chief Executive, Kosi Yankee, here to track how things are fared so far over the years, and whether, when it comes to disbursement and supporting those SMEs out there, are they really getting the support? Madam, thank you so much for your time. It's been a while.
It has been.
Is the pressure down now? No?
The pressure never goes down.
Really?
It's
interesting.
Like every day there's new pressure, there's something new, there's always something up. So the pressure never goes down.
But how are you doing, by the way?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing well by God's grace.
I've seen, in first I thought it was just one fund when we first spoke. Every day I see a new fund, a new disbursement, a new support. Help me out, and just to help my viewers out, as we speak right now, what is the status of the funds that you are managing here at the Ghana Enterprises Agency?
So thank you very much. Like you said, it's been a while. I think the first time we ever spoke was on the CAP business support. And over the years, a lot of things have evolved, a lot of new programs have come up. And I think it's very positive for the people of Ghana, especially considering the fact that we were brought up, or we were created and mandated to support and strengthen micro, small and medium enterprises. That mandate then meant that we had to come up with new innovative ways of building the capacity of Ghanaian youth, women, persons with disability, businessmen, businesswomen across the length and breadth of the nation. So we just couldn't sit there, and I think it was a mandate that the president really took seriously, because it felt and knew that the backbone of the Ghanaian economy was hinged on these MSMEs. So as much as possible, consistently, we were coming up with new innovative ways and new projects. The first major one that you remember was a CAP business support, which then led to the transformation of the then National Board for Small-Scale Industries into the Ghana Enterprises Agency, mandated and equipped with more resources to empower Ghanaian businesses. So with the CAP business support, if you remember, over 300,000 businesses with men, women, formal, informal businesses across the length and breadth of this nation receive financial support, and about 15,000 of them at that time also received technical assistance. This was to try to figure out how best we can help them manage the affairs of the businesses, to grow the businesses and strengthen them going forward. We didn't end there. The Ghana Enterprises Agency also went into a partnership with the MasterCard Foundation at that time, because we knew that the COVID challenge was going to impact negatively on a lot of businesses. So we came up with then what was called the Nkoswo. How do you go forward? How do you progress businesses? Which is really dear to my heart personally and to the government's heart. And so looking at Nkoswo, we came in to also support about 20,000 plus businesses with access to funding, also along the length and breadth of this nation, making sure that we were supporting those who couldn't benefit from the first phase of the funding as well, and also providing some form of technical, financial literacy, financial management training to build their businesses and build them as well. We didn't end there, because the mandate is really a huge mandate, and really, if we don't support the MSMEs of this nation, who are we then going to support? So government then further empowered us. Prior to COVID happening, the government had looked at an initiative called the Ghana Economic Transformation Project. And that project really was specifically designed to see how we could transform our non-resource businesses, and how we're looking at high growth businesses and really putting them in a trajectory that they were going to grow bigger, they were going to do better, they were going to create employment, they were going to survive, and then be able to turn this economy into the next level economy. Now, what we realized at that time was that COVID happened. And so to a large extent, we had to renegotiate and look at what it is that we wanted to do with that fund. So we looked at the COVID response grant at that time, supporting businesses that also had gone through some challenges, about 600 plus of them. These were looking specifically at small and medium enterprises. After that phase, the Ghana Economic Transformation Project then also took a step back to really look at what we had, what were the businesses that we had supported, what else could we do to really bring the transformation Ghanaians wanted to see, and came up with very innovative programs that had never happened in this nation's history. One was for the first time being inclusive and looking at persons with disabilities in a way nobody had ever done before. So we designed a program targeted at persons with disabilities to support their businesses to grow, providing grant funding. Then we also looked at a subsector of it and realized that if we leave our interventions the way they are, that women businesses would suffer and not be able to access certain funds. So we created and designed the Women Fund as well to support women SMEs as well. Then we also had the high growth support, which was looking at businesses that had potential for high growth. And so how do we provide funding to that? So we provided support. That we did half of that. We're also continuously doing that. We're not done with that project as well. It's ongoing. Then government also realized that, well, we have all these programs that we run. But if you look at our country and you look at the demographics and you look at the statistics, you realize that the youth, it's a huge population. And like I said at the last time we had a conversation, the youth is our asset. And so government then came up with a Youth Start intervention at that time. And one of the things that we looked at was how are we going to engage the youth to start their businesses? How are we going to support those who have started their businesses? And so at that point, we came up with two main interventions, which was the Young SME Fund, which were businesses that had already started by the youth. Then we had the Ghana Jobs and Skills Project's Youth Start intervention that was looking at youth that really had no hope. They're in the communities, they finish BEC, they might have a skill, they're not using it. They finish university or a technical or vocational institution. What do I do next? And as much as possible, we then had to take a step back. Because as Ghana Enterprises Agency, our goal is to problem solve, right? We can't just sit down and say, okay, tough luck. I mean, the challenges of the community is our challenge. And as much as possible, the Youth Start intervention also started. As at the end of last year, all the programs we did last year was about 100 million Ghana cedis funding businesses directly to support them to grow, looking at youth intervention, support to businesses, over 3,000 businesses as of last year, supporting them to grow so that they can actually really do what they are supposed to.
I'm counting about, and educate me, about 8 funds here. Aren't there too many funds scattered around? Because some would argue that in terms of focus, targeting, and getting the right results, do you need all these funds out there? Why didn't you just put together one fund and everybody, you're the plumber, and everybody applies when they meet, they get the support?
You know, that's the beauty of the work we do, the micro, small, and medium sector. It's a very intricate and very interesting subsector, right? And if you look at the micro, small, and medium enterprises, it's not a cookie cutter program. You can't just get up and say that I have a cookie cutter and I'm going to use that cookie cutter for everybody, right? Or I'm going to set and design the same interventions for everyone. It doesn't work like that. Because if I do that, then I disadvantage a lot of people. Because why would I disadvantage? Look at your community. So we live in a country like Ghana, and across Africa, one of the main things you see is that a lot of businesses are informal. Okay, so they're in the informal sector. There's a lot of debate around it. Should we formalize? Should we not formalize them? Right, it's neither here nor there. I mean, if it's formalized, it's good. If it's not formalized, there's certain reasons we need to figure out how to move them to the next level. Now, if I design interventions and I say, this is how the intervention is set up. You must be a registered business, you must be at this, you have to be in a certain category. You then really, what you're doing is that you're cutting off 70% of your population. Okay, so people will say, oh, you have so many funds. As you're saying that, you'd be surprised. People are saying you're not doing enough, right? So you can never win in this situation.
But isn't the argument here again about maybe even bureaucracy, even the hands, and where sometimes in the past where there are concerns that, listen, for instance, if you have all these funds, then you're bringing in more hands, the bureaucracy, even the cost itself in managing these funds will be another challenge. So if there is one fund and there are just 5 people managing it, that could be enough to feed the young and budding entrepreneurs and SMEs out there.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. Well, there could just be one fund, and there could be 1 million people complaining that there's just one fund. Because like I said, you cut off a lot of people. Because if I have a fund with a certain category, you realize that you can't have only 5 people run a fund that targets everybody. You know, you have a generation of a youth group that is different from what we've seen before. Their interests are totally different. The creative arts is picking up. You have the youth that is into skills in a way we've never seen before, right? And then you have also a generation, which is our generation, or my generation, sorry, or the generation before, or our parents' generation, or the generation after that, which really focuses on maybe trading or manufacturing or certain industries or light manufacturing that is different from each generation. And then you say, I have the same category, I have the same setup, I don't care about your needs, this is it, everybody apply. You exclude people, and we're not about exclusion, we're about inclusion. And that's why when you're looking at being inclusive, then you need to have variety. So that's where the variety comes in. That's where we then sit and say, okay, how do we support persons with disabilities, right? Because they've always been excluded. And you realize that they have a certain type of business that some might have or set up. And how do we support that? And so we need to design. The beauty of having variety is that now we're putting a lot of thought. So the government is putting a lot of thought into what we are giving the Ghanaian population.
In terms of the KPIs and the rich, has the multiplicity of funds dealt with the challenge of your reach into the community, into your target, in the space that you operate, or it is still a challenge?
Well, you know, I tell people that in life you need to ask for more, right? You need to ask for more, you need to want more, you need to aspire for more. Okay, so the work we're doing is not limiting, it's actually giving more people opportunity. Right? So you realize, you made a good point. You're like, oh, there's so many programs. Yes, because once we're done with one, we realize the needs. We see where the challenge was. We see what gaps need to be filled. So across the country, I can guarantee you, every region, every district in this nation, since government took up office and since I came into office, has benefited in some way, shape, or form through the interventions we've said. And we're not ending there. I mean, there's a whole lot more to come. And we have to be innovative in that way. And I think it's a beautiful thing for my team and I to see that we're working, we're creating, we're giving opportunity. We're not putting bureaucracy there. And that's why technology comes in. Because we realize if we put in technology, we reduce bureaucracy. You know, if we reduce, you increase access, you make it more accessible for other people. And that's what we're working on, and that's what we seek to achieve.
In terms of, you talked about the regional reach. So is it about the presence there or about the impact of these funds in these various communities that you've spoken about? So for instance, if somebody is coming from Mantimankebi and maybe in the western, the central region there, those people are benefited, or depending on the request. So if you have a situation where in the central region, the requests that have come in about 100,000 compared to Greater Accra, then there's a likelihood that people from central region may be able to draw down more from the various programs compared to those in the Greater Accra region.
You know, our programs are thought through, right? I think there's one thing that I realize is that sometimes people ask us questions assuming that we're just running interventions and then we say, hey,
throwing money out.
We are, you know, oh, come, where's everybody? Okay, Central gave me the most. No, but there's actually a process. And we put a lot of thought into the work we do. So before the intervention is really even completed, we sit and we look at demographics. So there's a science to the program, right? So it's not as easy as people might assume it is. There's really a science to it. So we put a science to what regions we're going, what districts we're going, what are the demographics, what is, if it's a youth program, what is the youth demographics. We are aligning with various associations and various partners to understand what the needs are, who is where are we going to get persons with disabilities, what are their needs, how do we make our programs effective, how do we safeguard them from challenges that might face. There's a whole lot that is going in, right? There's a whole lot of thought. Where do we have our training programs? Is it accessible to persons with disabilities? Do we have people who do sign language if there's a person who doesn't, who cannot hear? I mean, there's a whole lot. Even for the first time in this nation's history, and under no project, we design Braille books, right? So that people who cannot see can actually participate.
In terms of disbursement, put all these programs together, or maybe we may have to break it down and not the exact figures, but even the round figures as well. How much have you been able to disburse since the reformation of the agency and you started working on all these various programs?
I think we've been able to, I'm just going to give you an approximation. I know it's a plus or minus 10% or even more, but about 700 million Ghana cedis has been utilized in our interventions.
And do you think that is enough?
In life, nothing. You should never be satisfied with whatever you get. So I would want more, and I think people should want more, right? The question should not be, is it enough? The question is, how can we do more for people? And the question shouldn't be, is it too small? The question, because it's not about that. It's about even making the effort. In this nation's history, no government and no agency has disbursed so much funds to the micro, small, and medium enterprises in the way we've done before. It's unprecedented. Never happened before.
Interesting. I mean, knowing your background, for the private sector, they will say value for money, return on shareholder, return on investment, and all the rest. 700 million Ghana cedis. What has been the return on investment, if we want to quantify that? Not necessarily the value, but even the tangibles, the social returns with respect to all these funds that have been disbursed.
So it's interesting. So like you said, in the private sector, they will ask you, what is the return on investment? In public sector, we can't look at it through the lens of private sector, right? Because I protect the businesses when there were challenges, right? So imagine, your business, you're in a COVID mode, your business is failing, your challenges coming up. Which bank will come in? Because of return on investment. I'm coming in and I'm saying that as government, the government of Ghana, and I remember very well when the president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, really made a pronouncement and stuck by it and really invested in the businesses and said that we have a challenge, right? COVID came. Nobody expected it, nowhere in the world. One of the first countries to come out and say we're going to invest in the businesses. Yes, give or take, we couldn't have done everybody, but the ones that we did. What is the return? What is the value of what we did? One, some businesses didn't collapse because of that. I know people who expanded.
Are there reports and all the rest to establish evidence to establish that because of your workings and your dealings?
I can even take you to people. I can take you to businesses across the country. The businesses didn't go down. We have situations where people even employed. At that time, there was actually a survey that was done by Ghana Statistical Services and the UN agency and the World Bank to ascertain it. And they saw that our intervention actually caused certain businesses to open their doors, to actually also, even sales increased in certain areas, right? So you can look at it from any point you want to look at it from. Yes, some businesses failed. That's life, unfortunately. You can also look at those who actually were able to improve. People held steady. Our funding at that point was to hold steady, right? We know there's a challenge. Use these funds to hold steady. The success stories are many of what the people who started businesses, people who have grown their businesses, and people walk into my office. As I said, this is a public office. People can come in at any time. And people walk into our office and say, this is what your funding did for me. Right? And I don't know them from Adam.
We'll be getting more details about the impact investment and all the rest. This is PM Express Business Edition as we look at the Ghana Enterprises Agency and what they've been able to do over the years in terms of the impact of these investment, disbursement, and also the state of the SME support out there. This is PM Express. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we focus on the Ghana Enterprises Agency, the state of disbursement of those funds that they are managing and the program, as well as support for SMEs out there and how are they doing. And we'll continue looking at the impact of almost or more than 700 million Ghana cedis that has gone out there to these SMEs there. Let's equate it to, again, the request that came in, and that has been the challenge in the past. I don't know how much progress that we made on that one. How would you equate this amount that you're giving out, i.e. the request that also came in and the approvals as well from the agency?
Okay. So I think that the request that came in was huge, right? In the billions.
Wow.
Because I think that what we did, which was very innovative, which also had a lot of pushback and a lot of pushback from Ghanaians and some people, was that using technology.
Yeah.
So being able to use technology then allowed more people to seek out support. And so that allowed them to apply, and for the first time we got a huge number of people applying for these funds. And also some people thought that, well, let me use this as an opportunity to request for all the things I need. So the funds, the requests were in the billions as at that time, but then we also then went into conversation with some of the associations and some of the members as to really what the needs of those associations were and the sizes of the type of businesses under those associations, so that we could tailor the funding needs to them. And so that's what then led to us being able to utilize what we have. And it was one of those things that we were praying really hard that we'll be able to do with little that we have, to be able to do so much more. And I think we achieved to a large extent. We could have done more, but we didn't have all the resources. But that's why we keep coming up with innovative programs.
I asked this question because I knew that the last time there were people who were still arguing that they were struggling and putting their requests through, the turnaround time and all the rest. How has the agency been able to deal with this concern about the requests that were brought through, the turnaround time, and approving these requests to ensure that they get the money on time?
So, you know, I think I'm really proud of my team and what we achieved here and what government sought to do with it once again. Why do I say that? Because nobody had been through COVID before, right? It just happened. We'd never in our generation been through an epidemic or a pandemic that caused everything to come to a standstill. So bear in mind that this funding process and this whole program at that time came at a time when everybody was at home. It came at a time when they said everybody should go home. It came at a time when systems were down. Globally, not even, let's even forget Ghana, but globally things were down. So trying to do everything, trying to figure out a system where we could even verify if the people were real. Right? Without a lot of interference, without staff getting COVID in the process. How do you verify that the people exist? How do you verify the funds are going to the right person? Right? So all those processes, which we had to put in place, took a bit of time, but we still gave them on time. The banks also had never given so much funding to people at once. Okay, I currently have a program we are running. You have to disburse to about 3,000 people, right? But no banking system, right, has the ability to say that today we're giving funds to 1,000 people at once.
Are you worried about that? Because again, you are battling with the challenge of ensuring that people whose requests have been approved, and looking at time being of essence, they get these monies on time to reinvest in their business. Was that a worry for you?
It is. It is a worry for me. I mean, for me, because the work I do is based on timing. And it's really important for me because of my own work ethics and my own beliefs, right? That if I promise, I deliver. That if I have to give, I give what I have to give, right? And so you have a system in place. So how do you, but that's where the innovation comes in.
And when did you engage the banks to correct this challenge? Because
we did.
And have they been able to address, or is still work in progress?
Oh no, I mean, those are some of the things from the past that we jammed on. But it just meant being on top of things, right? Really knowing what is happening at every point in time, engaging the banks. Some of the banks were very welcoming. We found ways to work with them. Others too, It was what it was, right? There are always ways. That's why we try to use mobile money in the process. Okay, so that's what helped us use things like mobile money, use banking systems. All of this was to facilitate it, and this was also to minimize or to not allow cash being held by staff, right, for disbursements.
So if let's say today Georgia first request is approved, let's say someone else's or Kwabena Mensah's report is approved or request is approved, what is the turnaround time actually from the start, even let's say from the application for maybe the COVID Relief Fund or the SME, the Small Scale Enterprise Support Fund? What is the turnaround time from the application or maybe to even from the approval and then the disbursement? So
for the COVID, I mean, we're not doing COVID funds anymore because COVID doesn't, it exists, but it's not in our face. So that around that time, there was 3 months, somewhere longer because of banking details, because bear in mind, because we didn't want to hand cash, people had to open bank accounts, right? So the process from either their side, the bank side, once we do the approvals, the funds go through. Once the banks do the approvals and tell us, then the funds go through. Now, for some of our programs, we have maybe 3 to 4 months, because bear in mind that we have to do due diligence.
Isn't that too long, some would say?
Well, some go to the banks 3 years, they never get funding, right? Let's be realistic, okay? I'm doing the most with the resources that I have. I'm doing the most with my limited resources, which is that. Why is it too long? How about I give money to someone and the person doesn't exist? That's a bigger problem. Okay. So now, once you sign the contract, it takes less than 2 weeks. It's up to 2 weeks for the funds to come to you, right? But between that period, the person is putting in place the application. They are writing maybe a business plan for it. They have to go to, we have to do due diligence to make sure the business exists. There's a grants committee that has to sit. There's a process. The process cannot be circumvented, because once you do that, then you put yourself in a position to get in trouble. So there's a process that we go through. So it's not too long, I would say, because sometimes it goes to the banks and it takes 3 years, it takes a year.
What mechanisms have you put in place to ensure that when a German says that she is this business, doing X business, located maybe in Tafupankrano or maybe somewhere in the central region, maybe Pedu, she really exists and she's doing this business?
So we actually have our district offices. So as much as possible, the portals to help us for the application process. Once the application process goes through, there are different reviews, and then we go to the site. So we go to the site to see if Kwabena Mensah does exist, if the business exists. They do a due diligence, they do a write-up, a memo that they bring to the committee. In some instances, they bring samples of the products that they are producing, if it's a tangible product, to showcase that this is what is being done. And then from that angle, they decide.
Also, some would also ask that, listen, with respect to these beneficiaries that have benefited, so away from the monetary value, in terms of the numbers, do we have a fair idea about the number of businesses or maybe individuals who have benefited from this more than 700 million Ghana that has been disbursed? Any rough idea here that we're looking at the number?
Yeah, we are. I mean, I know that over 700,000 people have benefited from different interventions we have.
How have we ensured, and I know there will be a lot of questions when these things came up, there were some who have argued and made that, no, these funds are just to reward some party faithfuls or those who are in the good books of government. How are these funds, from what you have done, the review, the evaluations, have they really gone to people who had no connection, who were a friend of Madame Aye or connected to somebody in government and all the rest, or maybe some party faithfuls? That's some assurance here or something?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, those questions come up and they will never stop coming up. That's life. It doesn't matter which government, doesn't matter which person, it would always come up. But it's important to know that that's why we brought the technology portal. Because the technology portal doesn't ask you
whether you are a CPP card-bearing member
it doesn't.
To get the benefit.
And the second thing is that it's actually quite interesting because by looking at you, I can't tell who you are aligned with or what you represent.
No big man would drop a complimentary card, look at, Kwesi Appiah because he is a constituent secretary of my party.
People, all sorts of people, even your church, your pastor might drop a card, right? But the question is,
his request?
No, it depends on if the person has passed, right? The system pulls the people. But the point I'm trying to make is that people will drop. I'm sure you will stop and say, okay, my brother applied last week, but they haven't. Well, there's a technology portal in the system, right? So there's that question. People will say, I favor a certain region over others. I can tell you without doubt. And I use that intervention. The top 10, there are over 200 districts in this country. The top 10 districts that benefited from this, there's some of them. From regions that I'm like, you understand? The top 5, 6, I'm sure people will say that.
Top 3 regions.
Top 3. I mean, there's the top 10 districts. There's Volta, Western. You understand? There's no science to it. That is why we're careful with the design implementation, and I said it at the beginning. We look at the demographics of the country, and then we assign a percentage to that demographic, right? So you look at Ghana, Greater, Ashanti, Volta, Oti, Northern, Savannah, all of that. There's data that tells you how many youth there are in all of these countries, all of these regions. There's data that tells you the most populated. Based on those percentages, that's how we divide the interventions to start off with.
If today they should commission maybe KPMG something to do an audit, you think that your audits would vindicate all the things that you've done in terms of disbursement, in terms of
I tell people I'm the most audited institution in this
country.
I have various partners. And why do my partners keep giving me funding? Because almost I'm audited about 10 times in a year, right? There's Ghana Audit Service. Our partners are bringing in auditors from Germany, from London, from Burkina, from PwC, KPM, everywhere. And because we know that, we even use some of these auditors to ascertain and verify the data before it's pulled from the system. There's currently impact assessments going on, right? I know what people would say. I know that people would think that, the work that you're doing, maybe you're not doing it. So because of that, we bring in various partners, and our funders bring in auditors. Because we satisfy them, and you can look at the MasterCard Foundation as an example. The MasterCard Foundation funds typically doesn't give funding to government. We've been given 3 times. The first fund was the Nkoso, which was the first design which we worked with them, which later rolled out to be one of their major programs on the continent, right? We have the Young Africa Works. The target was 39,000. When they went on the field, they realized we had 94,000 jobs created, right? And then they came back and said, then we need you to do 250,000 jobs. That's what led to the new intervention. No funder is going to give you funding if they haven't audited your work. And this is not Government of Ghana funds we're talking about. We're talking about partners who've decided to collaborate with Government of Ghana. So the second phase of the MasterCard intervention, actually this is the third funding. We have GIZ that has funded us, and they bring in auditors all the time.
Let's look at recovery for that, especially with the government fund, because that is where everybody will be excited about. For those funds that were meant to be more of an investment, and I stand to be educated, what has been the level of recovery in terms of these loans that were given out to these SMEs as well?
So I think that one of the things is that what we did was we gave the funds to the beneficiaries through the participating financial institutions, and the institutions were supposed to also, the financial institutions were supposed to support us to recover some. Some of the funds were also grant funding, right? And to date, we've been able to do some recoveries from the funds on both Nkoswo and the CABAS funding, and we're even going to The MasterCard Foundation, for example, under those funds that were recovered, are asking us to re-lend it back to the community.
Are these partners so satisfied about your modeling that the challenge in the past had been getting the right agency or the right mechanism or tool with a national presence to extend support to these small, medium-sized enterprises out there?
I think that partners are looking for people they can work with and trust. And I think that I always tell people there's a lot of funding out there. It's just finding the right partner that can align with you on what you seek to achieve. The president has said it time and time again, create jobs to be created. And that's exactly why this institution was modified, our mandate was expanded to seek and support in job creation. We realized that to be able to achieve that, we needed to have a strategic plan and direction. Right? So for a lot of our funders and partners was really coming to them and saying, this is our strategic plan, this is our direction, this is where government seeks to go. This is where we're going, and work with us to achieve that. Let's collaborate and do it. Now, what government agencies such as Ghana Enterprises Agency does is to give scale. I mean, we're the only, and even if you look across Africa, and a lot of our funders and partners will tell us, it's difficult to find an agency that has a reach the way we do.
Interesting.
Where we've decentralized the way we provide interventions at the doorstep of the partner. Okay, so you have interventions where we have offices, we have the BACs or Business Advisory Centers, we have the Business Resource Centers across the length and breadth of the country, and then you have all those set up, right? So you realize that our reach is magnificent.
Let me look at the people here and the personnel. Are there secondment? Because in the past, and not your agency, they've been concerned about managing funds, and sometimes the people required to even manage the funds, that they are overheads alone. Sometimes they even take about more than half of the fund that they are making or they are managing. How are you dealing with the people factor here, with all the presence across the regions, to ensure that we don't have a situation where even the overhead cost in managing these programs takes about more than half of these funds that you are managing?
Do you know how much it costs for a US agency to manage a project?
I don't know.
Percentage, 50% of funds that are raised most often goes into administrative costs. It never happens here.
No, what's the percentage?
10 to 20%.
Interesting.
Across the world, and that's small. US agency projects, if you go round, it's close to 50% is admin cost, salaries, trips, that, and some of these foreign companies. Here in my agency, I can tell you, it's not 10%. That. We intentionally make sure that the funds go to the people. It's intentionality. And that's why also other funders like working with us, because they know that the funds go to the people who deserve it.
Because I raise this thing, because again, then how do you get all the scrutiny that you're doing and all the rest? How do you get the best of hands and the best of brains out there to come and work with you, to scrutinize these applications, to ensure that they are very independent-minded, they are being remunerated well, so they are not tempted and all the rest? 10% is interesting. Are we getting the required 10% is not even going towards salaries, right? The required hands to work on all these?
We need a lot, but you know, it's a double-edged sword. At the one breath, you're asking me that it's not too much money not going into this. At the same breath, you're asking me that are they being remunerated enough? If I told you I was putting it into salaries, what would happen?
I would complain.
You're going to hit me at it. At the same time, you want me to remunerate the people and get them to do the work.
The threats of not being corrupt, that's the argument here. Because if the conditions of service are good. It is the perception
of corruption. You just said the threat of not being corrupt. It's the perception. And I think that we need to be very clear on a lot of these things, right? Because you can't, you know, this game we do, or this work we do, you can't win on any angle. Because like I rightly said, you're asking me, are they being paid well enough? If I said, yes, we're using 50% for, you say, that's too much. If I say no now, you're saying, but it's too small, so they might be. You know, it's interesting because government of Ghana pays the salaries of most of us, which is on the single spine structure, right? And I'm sure a lot of us know what the single spine structure is. And I think it's important and good for us to acknowledge the fact that a lot of the people we work with, our staff, right? It's the passion behind it.
I see.
You need passion. And I'm telling you, if you don't have passion, you will not do this job. Because your salaries will never be enough for you. You get what I'm trying to say? It will never be. And if you're going to wait to have better salaries to execute the mandate, you're never ever going to support people with the work you do. There are communities where sometimes people use their own personal cars. People use their own funding, which technically shouldn't be the case. But unfortunately, they're passionate about it. And one day I would like to take you to the regions to see the work my people do. This job is a call to service, and that's what we do.
When I come back, I want to look at the learnings, having worked on these projects and programs over the years. Is it a problem of funding, technical support, and in terms of policy-wise going forward, what should be done? This is PM Express Business Edition. As you look at the Ghana agency, the state of disbursement, and also support small, size, and medium enterprises out there. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the Ghana Enterprises Agency. How much they have disbursed and have they been able to support those SMEs out there? Madam, I was trying to get some understanding from you over these years, National Board for Small Scale Industry, Ghana Enterprises Agency. The lens, we've always heard that funding, a challenge for SMEs, a challenge for small businesses out there. Over the years, and I know you've had times where personally had to sit on some of these requests and all the rest, is it a problem about funding that if today, through my connections, I'm able to get Bill and Melinda Gates or Rockefeller Foundation to invest about maybe $100 million or maybe $5 billion to agencies like yours? Can we deal with that problem of funding? Will it go off?
I don't think we'll ever be able to deal with the problem of funding.
Really? Working with all these small businesses out there.
I mean, there are a lot of them. There are a lot of challenges. And I think that there's always what I say, the chicken and hen, you know, which one comes first, the chicken and egg. But the challenge we're facing is that day in, day out, new businesses come up. They all come with their different challenges. Some of them are regulatory support. Some of them are even knowing how to run a business. Some of them is access to funding. But most often, when you ask people what their challenges are, they'll say funding.
But that's something, is that the reality on the ground after working on all these institutions?
Funding is a challenge.
That today, if we should get the required funding out there, like maybe $10 billion, like listen, let's go out there, let's try and target all the businesses. We address a major challenge facing
We will.
So
if
funding is the problem.
It is not it is part of the problem.
50, 20, 70,
I can't
80%.
give a percentage because I know people
Based
without
on
funding.
I mean, I'm just making this because sometimes we try to develop or hinge so much on the textbook and a research that was done about 20 or 50 years ago. But you have had the opportunity to engage a lot of business, over $1 billion requests.
I think funding is a challenge for people, but I think there are reasons why there's also a funding challenge. One, the type of businesses. Two, the setup of the businesses. Three, actually even what they use the funding for, if they've received funding in the past. They use it for the right purposes. Are they keeping their books? So if you're not keeping your books, if you have certain challenges, then of course funding is going to be a challenge because nobody wants to invest. If you look at the financial institutions, it goes back to your return on investments. The investors want a return on their investment. So nobody wants to invest in a business that is going to cause them problems, right? So yes, they have the challenge of that. Now, how do you build the businesses? You look at our economy. 70% of your businesses are informal, right? The informality means your business is not registered, you're not paying taxes, so on and so forth. You're not keeping regular funds in your account. Of course, no one is going to give you funding most often because they're realizing that you're informal, where they're going to find you when there's a problem. So do you formalize before you get access to funding? So there are a whole lot of things that really restrains it. If yes, there's a fund and we target it and are intentional about it and we grow certain businesses, it will address some of the challenges that some MSMEs face and would also address the fact that we're able to target interventions to grow certain particular businesses, which will then also lead to maybe creating employment for others.
What about the challenge sometimes about a typical Ghanaian business doesn't go beyond the third decade? What about their technical expertise and managerial expertise? Was it also a challenge that came up? And how
Yes.
do we deal with that challenge where we will have a lot more Ghanaian entrepreneurs travel beyond 30 years, 20 years? What about that challenge? Technical expertise, how do we deal with after getting the money? How do you manage the money well to get the right resource people to work with and expand the business?
I think that mostly it's the transition of the businesses. So like transiting from the first generation to the second generation or the third generation. But I think that it goes back again to certain things, you know. There's some businesses that have been able to do that. There's some that haven't succeeded. Why? Some of them could be family issues. It could be even did they leave a will? Right, as simple as that. It could be the number of people, children or wives that the business was left to and people who fight around it. It could even be the discipline, right, of being disciplined as a person to grow the business. It could also be the fact that maybe certain regulatory setup or frameworks didn't support the growth or the migration of the business to the next decade. So there's so many different factors that are inhibiting a lot of these businesses from moving from one level to the next level.
And will you call for more technical support for these businesses?
Yes.
Because when they cry for the funds, after the funds, you still marvel about the state of these enterprises going forward.
Yeah, I think funding is one. I think also technological advancement, because I mean, as we sit here, the world has changed. And there are certain businesses that will not move forward unless they change with it. So you look at Nokia, right? Like, what happened when everybody was moving, BlackBerry, all these phone companies that couldn't migrate? And it goes back to our local businesses as well. Are we moving with the future? Are we moving into the future? Or are we stuck in our ways? How are we doing things? Who are the personnel? Are we training the right people? Are we giving them the right skill set to move the businesses to the next level? So a lot of businesses are also faced with a lot of human resource challenges. So I know people who just say, I can't deal with the human resource. I'm done with this.
I was heavy on the financial support bit. What about in terms of your dealings with these businesses? What about the technical support as well? Were you heavy in that space?
We are very heavy.
How did that also help these firms going forward and being these success stories out there?
So we're very heavy on technical assistance. We even have a program called Enterprise Grow, and it's looking at how best we can grow businesses. And we've seen the changes, the benefit of the trainings impacting them. I hear the success stories. As I said, they call, they tell our partners. We have people who do audits at the back end of the day who speak to some of these businesses. This technical assistance has really moved the businesses forward. That's why I'm able to say it's not only about financing, but about technical support as well. We have people we've trained that have started the businesses without having to wait for funding. You know, so we've used technical assistance to grow, to improve productivity of businesses, and to even help people be able to export their businesses because now they have high productivity, they're able to have good quality work through trainings, through the Kaizen interventions we've brought on board, so many other things.
The private sector or the organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates and all the rest will be heavy on return on investment. Again, looking at what you've done over the years and the experience on the ground and all the rest, would you advocate for more social investment, social funding support from whichever that may come from, and even government as well? Because then if you're so much focused on or heavy on return on investment, you might not get the required funding to support these SMEs out there.
So I think for a lot of the funders and the people who work with, it's not return on investment. Why? Because a lot of the funds that come from some of these foundations, the focus is on charity. And what then it means is that the interest of these foundations or these partners is really looking at impact on the social impact. So we talk about social impacts on different levels, and they're looking at how many jobs are we going to create? And not just any jobs, but jobs that are dignified, that are fulfilling. So we're talking about globally in Africa, jobs are a challenge. Even globally, you take Africa, same challenge. Then you delve deeper. Youth unemployment across the continent is a huge challenge, right? So you have funders or partners or whoever they are who come in and say, all I want is for you to create jobs. And I need you to create X amount so that you deal with the challenges you're facing in your country.
Would you advocate for more funding from government? I know that every sector is fighting in the era of austerity and all the rest. Do you think that there should be more allocation to this agency based on what you have done over the years?
I think that everybody should advocate for more money. I call
Would
myself,
you ask for more money?
I always ask for more, and I would ask for
it?
more. I always get what I want, not as much as I want, but I get what.
As we try and wrap up on this interview, in terms of policy direction as well, because you've engaged these people on the ground as well, what would you be pushing for and engaging your superior trade ministry, if the cabinet calls you together with the ministry, or lead a presentation in terms of policy direction for these SMEs based on your experience on the ground? What would be the most critical points that you'll be telling cabinet and government to look at to help these small businesses out there?
I think that, I mean, I've engaged the small businesses a lot in the past few years. I have one-on-ones with them to understand their work, and a lot of times the conversation centers first and foremost on human resources, the skills of the human resource that we have. So how do we design a policy that suits that? Technology. The whole world is going digital, artificial intelligence, right? How do we really design policy around that? And how do we strengthen our technology firms to also better support this? Then you also have regulatory support. Like, how do we bring in? I think Food and Drugs Authority and the Ghana Enterprises Agency have a strong collaboration on our progressive licensing that has been able to support more businesses and allow them to even export and get on shelves. How do we strengthen that policy? Really, how do we look at also taxes and in terms of supporting these SMEs? What are the different structures we can look at? How do we build on that? And all of these are things that as an agency, we work towards and we build on to support the nation.
Thanks so much for the time, Madam. I appreciate it so much. And that was Madam Kosi Yankiaye. She's the Chief Executive of the Ghana Enterprises Agency, as we track the funds that they have disbursed and whether they've lived up to the expectation about supporting these small, medium-sized enterprises. I know the debate will still go on in your homes and your offices about whether they can do more for us, and maybe whether Oliver Twist, we need more financial support to assist these small businesses out there. My name is George Ravi. This has been PM Express Business Edition. Have a great day.